It wasn't supposed to be like this. When the British people voted Labour, they thought they were voting for change, for protection, for progress. They believed Labour would stand up for their rights, their freedoms. But they were all so very wrong. Slowly, almost without noticing, the freedoms they thought they were defending began to slip away. Speech that once sparked healthy debate is now dangerous. A single wrong word online and you could be arrested, jailed, and labelled a criminal. Yes, some of the posts that landed people in prison were offensive, vile even. But is that really enough to justify what comes next? One by one, they strip away your life. First, your reputation, smeared across the headlines. Then your job, your ability to provide for your family, gone. And soon, even your friends turn their backs, afraid of even being associated with you. You become a pariah, all because you said something they didn't want to hear. This isn't a warning about the future. This is happening right now in the UK, and it's about to happen again. Kamala Harris is poised to take the same route in the United States. As she edges closer to the presidency, she's already leading the charge to tighten controls on what can be said online. Labour's crackdown on free speech is just a glimpse of what is about to come next for the citizens of America. These isolated incidents, they're pretty much part of a massive plan, a global agenda to control not just what you say, but who you are. This global agenda is known as the Great Reset, which isn't coming, it's already here. And the first target is freedom of speech. So what happens when even speaking out in defense of your own beliefs can land you in jail, when they can take everything from you for saying the wrong thing? Stay with me as I break down the signs, expose the agenda, and show you exactly what's happening before it's too late. Welcome friends, welcome to Code Unknown. In this video we're going to go through all the four main stages of the Great Reset, of Klaus Schwab's Great Reset. But really, if you've never heard of the Great Reset, and I'm sure a lot of you haven't, or if you have, you're not quite sure what it is, then I think the best place to start this video is by showing you what the Great Reset is. So, with that being said, here is the Great Reset. I know a lot of people believe that conspiracy theories generally run round with tinfoil hats on, and that the Great Reset is a term coined by these very people, but it's not. The Great Reset is a global initiative introduced by the World Economic Forum, headed by Klaus Schwab. At its heart, the Great Reset advocates for three main goals: the transformation of economies to make them more resilient, the adoption of policies that promote environmental sustainability, and the improvement of social equity by reducing inequalities. On the surface, these seem like noble objectives, but here's where it gets complicated. Critics of the Great Reset argue that it's more about centralizing control than solving global problems. They claim that the reset offers governments and multinational corporations the opportunity to reshape economies in ways that concentrate power at the very top. This includes pushing for greater regulation, digital surveillance, and even social credit systems, tools that could be used to control not just economies, but individual behaviours. The concern isn't just about economic change, it's about a future where personal freedoms, especially speech, privacy and financial independence, are slowly eroded. The Great Reset they fear is the beginning of a new world order, where governments and large corporations work together to control how we live, and the pandemic was just the catalyst. You may be wondering how a group of powerful people implement such a reset. Well, it wouldn't happen overnight. It would come in stages. Small little cuts are often easier to accept than removing entire limbs at once. The Great Reset will come in 4 main stages. And by the time we get to stage 4, the Endgame, there'll be nothing you can do, nothing you can say, because they will own you. This is not just a theory, there's evidence for it all the way around us. And in this video, we're going to go through the stages, starting with the first stage. So now you know what the Great Reset is, now you need to find out what the 4 stages are. And we're going to start that off with numero uno. Stage 1. Controlling what you say and what you think isn't just about silencing the opposition. It's about creating an environment where only one version of the truth exists. If people can't question what they're told, if they can't challenge the narrative, then there's no resistance when the deeper stages of control are rolled out. It's a tactic as old as time. Every regime that seeks absolute power starts by limiting what its people can say. Because once you control what people can say, you control what they can think. And once you control what they can think, you can control what they do. All you have to do is take a look at what's happening right now. Here in the UK, Labour has begun rolling back free speech protections, especially in universities. Debate is being stifled. Ideas that challenge the system are shut down before they can even take root. They'll tell you it's for your protection, but in reality, it's about making sure you never hear anything that challenges the narrative. And it's not just happening in the UK. In the US, Kamala Harris, we'll go Kamala, I'm sure it's Kamala. Kamala Harris is pushing for tighter regulations of online speech, supposedly to fight misinformation, but the real question is, who decides what counts as misinformation? Let's take a simple example from history. Custer's last stand. The official narrative depicts this moment as a brave last stand by General Custer and his men against overwhelming odds during the Battle of Little Bighorn. But to others, especially from the perspective of Native American tribes, it's a story of an invading force being justly defeated while trying to steal land that wasn't theirs to begin with. Two sides of the same story, two completely different narratives. The facts don't change, but the way the story is told and the side you're allowed to hear changes everything. This is exactly what happens when governments and corporations control what information is considered true. They shape the narrative, decide what perspective is valid, and just erase the rest. If they can do that with something as simple as a historical battle, imagine what they could do with global events unfolding today. The worrying part is, it's already happening. Look at immigration in the UK. People who express their genuine concerns about the immigration policies are often labelled as far-right racists or dissenters. It doesn't matter how valid or well thought out their arguments are, once they've been branded with those labels, their opinions are dismissed and their voices are silenced. Don't believe me? I'll prove it to you. I'm going to say one name, and I guarantee that there will be people listening to this right now who, upon hearing this name, will go, "Oh, really? He's actually going to use him as proof?" That name is Tommy Robinson. Now, I don't agree with 99.9% of the stuff that Mr. Robinson says, but I will always listen. But more and more people today are just listening to nothing but the labels. This labelling isn't just about shutting down debate, it's about discrediting anyone who dares to challenge the narrative. Once you've been given a label, everything you say or believe is tainted. The discussion is over before it begins. And if they can silence you on immigration, imagine what happens when they move on to more sensitive issues. The line between free expression and dangerous dissent keeps shifting, and if you don't stay in line, you're cut off. Now look at Elon Musk. He's one of the most powerful people on the planet, and even he's under attack for refusing to censor free speech on X. Why? Because his platform represents one of the last places where people can still speak freely. The pressure to take him down is immense, because if they can control that platform, they control one of the last bastions of free expression. Here's why this matters. Once the narrative is controlled, the next stages of the Great Reset become easy to implement. You won't question the transition to digital currencies or cashless societies. You won't fight back when you're being tracked by surveillance systems or when social credit scores are introduced, because the idea of resistance will have already been erased from your mind. This is why controlling free speech is just stage one. It's not just about what you can say, it's about shaping what you believe, and once they control that, the rest of the agenda can fall in place without you even realizing it. I know it sounds grim, almost impossible. It's really implausible, but it's not. However, that's just the first stage. What's next, you might be wondering? Do you like money? Now that the narrative is under control, the next critical step in the Great Reset is financial control. Why? Because controlling money means controlling behaviour. Once people's financial freedoms are dependent on the system, resistance becomes nearly impossible. But this isn't just something they can roll out overnight. Just like controlling speech, it has to be done gradually, subtly, so people don't realise what's happening until it's too late. Stage 2 is all about digital currencies and the push towards a cashless society. On the surface, this will be framed as a way to make life easier, quicker payments, more convenience, better tracking of criminal activities. But behind the scenes, it's about giving governments the power to monitor, track and control every single transaction you make. The tools they'll use to achieve this is central bank digital currencies, or CBDCs. Governments around the world are already working on this. Once cash is phased out and we're all using digital currencies, every financial transaction will be traceable. Every time you spend anything, the government will know about it. And they won't just know where your money goes, they'll control how and when it's spent. But here's where it gets more sinister. In a cashless society, they won't need to arrest or fine people for dissent. They can simply freeze your access to funds. One wrong move, one critical tweet or post, and suddenly your bank account is frozen. Without cash, you're completely dependent on the system. And if you step out of line, they'll make sure you can't pay rent, buy food, or even travel. This sounds like a dystopian Orwellian future, but it's already happening. It's happening in places like China, where the government uses a combination of digital currencies and social credit scores to control its citizens. If you don't comply with government guidelines, your social credit score drops, and with it, your access to financial services. In the West, we're not far behind. The pandemic pushed us further into cashless payments than ever before. We're getting used to living without cash, and that's exactly what they want. But there's one problem standing in the way of full financial control, and that's decentralized cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin. Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies represents a threat because it operates outside of governmental control. For the Great Reset to succeed, Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies need to be discredited or eliminated. That's why the next move is to demonize Bitcoin users. Governments will start labeling cryptocurrencies as tools for terrorism, money laundering, or even illegal activity. We're already seeing this rhetoric gain traction. The US Treasury and the Financial Action Task Force have pushed for tighter regulations on cryptocurrencies, citing concerns over terrorism. And governments around the world are starting to crack down on crypto trading. The strategy is simple. Make Bitcoin users seem like criminals. By associating with Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies with terrorism and illegal activities, they can justify increased regulation, make it harder to use, and eventually make the public turn completely against it. Once people believe that cryptocurrency is dangerous, they'll be willing to accept centralized digital currencies as a safe, government-approved option. And it doesn't stop there. With the introduction of CBDCs, governments can go beyond monitoring transactions. They can start conditioning behaviour. Imagine for a second a world where every financial decision is linked to your social standing. If your social credit score drops, so does your financial access. Suddenly, your ability to buy a house, get a loan, or even shop for groceries is dependent on your compliance. It's the ultimate form of control, and it's closer than you think. The narrative is already being shaped, and once digital currencies are fully implemented, it's too late to resist. That's why controlling money is stage 2, because once they control your finances, they control your life, and the most effective way to neutralize opposition is to cut you off financially. So they control what you say, they've got your cash, and they control how you spend it. What comes next? What's the third stage? This one's probably one of the most frightening of them all, because we're only about 10 to 15 years away from it if things progress how they're progressing now. This is the monitoring and surveillance of your every move. I hope you enjoyed freedom, because you're about to lose it. Stage 3 of the Great Reset is about surveillance and control. A world where your every action, every step you take is being monitored, recorded and evaluated. And while it might sound like science fiction, the technology to make it happen is already here. Take artificial intelligence powered surveillance. In the UK, we've already seen it in action. Facial recognition cameras are scanning the faces of everyday people in everyday places like King's Cross Station. Without you even knowing it, your identity is being checked in real time. They'll tell you it's for safety to prevent terrorism or crime, but the reality is far more concerning. It's the first step towards building a network that monitors your every movement. And that network will be linked to digital IDs and social credit systems. Soon, the decision on whether you can travel, access services or move freely will no longer be up to you. But this goes deeper than surveillance. We are entering the era of smart cities. These cities are designed to run on data, tracking not just how you travel, but your energy use, shopping habits, and much more. These systems are pitched as creating greener, more efficient cities. But in reality, they'll be used to monitor your every move. Once these smart cities are fully operational, they won't just run on data. They'll run on control. And if you don't follow the rules, your access to services could be cut off. And while you might think of a social credit system as something that only happens in authoritarian regimes like China, don't be fooled. It's already being tested in the West. In China, your behaviour is tracked, scored, and determines what you can and can't do. But here in the West, we're seeing the groundwork laid with credit scoring systems, reputation scores on platforms like Uber, and even proposed digital IDs. And we've already had a taste of what this looks like. During the pandemic, health passports became the first step towards restricting movement. If you weren't vaccinated, you couldn't travel or enter public spaces. Imagine that system expanding to include not just your health status, but your environmental choices, your financial transactions, and even your social behaviour. Stage 3 is about creating a digital prison, where every action you take is monitored and judged. But there's something else we need to consider. Look at the ongoing conflicts in Ukraine and the Israel-Palestine conflict. The United Kingdom and the United States are heavily involved in these wars, backing sides and providing support. But why are they so invested in these conflicts? Could it be that these wars serve the perfect distraction, keeping the public's focus away from what's really going on? Let us not forget how history has shown us that governments use crises and conflicts as opportunities to push through their agendas. After 9/11, the US introduced the Patriot Act, vastly expanding surveillance powers in the name of fighting terrorism. Likewise, the United Kingdom's Investigatory Powers Act, often called the Snoopers Charter, gave sweeping powers to monitor the public, all justified by the need to protect against future threats. And this isn't just modern history. There have been documented cases of false flags or manipulated events being used to justify military action or stricter controls. Think of the Gulf of Tonkin incident in 1964, which was used to escalate the Vietnam War, or the weapons of mass destruction narrative that led to the invasion of Iraq. Both these events were either exaggerated or manipulated, and in both cases they led to massive governmental control over public opinion and policy. Now, with the conflicts in Ukraine and Israel-Palestine, we have a similar situation. The United Kingdom and the United States aren't just backing sides, they're heavily invested in keeping the conflicts going. Why? Could it be because instability creates the perfect environment for pushing through stage 3? When people are distracted by war, they don't notice new surveillance laws, new digital tracking system, or the quiet rollout of social credit frameworks. It's not that the conflicts themselves are manufactured, but the governments can and have used situations to justify increasing their grip on power. If the public sees these wars as an existential threat, they are more likely to accept greater control over their movements and behaviours in the name of national security. This was the case after 9/11, and it could be happening again, just under different circumstances. Now, I need to warn you, this is where this video takes a very dark turn, because the fact is, we're only about 5 to 10 years away from this becoming a reality. The evidence is all around us. The use of AI surveillance is expanding across the world, including right here in the UK and the United States. Governments and private companies are investing heavily in smart cities, and these projects are well underway. And in countries like China, we already have a fully functioning social credit system. All it takes is one more global crisis, whether it's a climate emergency, health crisis, or another form of public threat, and the justification for full surveillance will be there. Allow me, if you will, to propose the perfect scenario for that justification. Imagine, for instance, a Russian delivered or Iranian planted tactical nuke going off. A catastrophe of this scale would not only devastate lives, but it would also offer the perfect vehicle to bring in every single control measure possible. The public would be so terrified, so desperate for safety, that they wouldn't just accept these controls, they'd demand them. Governments around the world wouldn't just be justified in implementing total surveillance and movement control, they would be celebrated for it. In times of fear and chaos, people will beg for security, no matter the cost. So one last time, I ask you again, why is the United States and the United Kingdom hell-bent on stoking the fires of war? Well, were you watching this? I'm sure you sat there going, Jesus, Mary and Joseph. Think how it is for me doing this. This is not something that I walked into knowing quite where the research would take me. And yeah, it's not been pretty. But now that they control your narrative, now they control what and where you spend your cash, and control where you go, who you're seeing with, what you're doing, and making sure you are the perfect citizen, what's the last stage? What's the endgame? And here we are. Now we've reached the endgame, stage 4, the final step of the Great Reset. It's not just about what you say, what you do, or how you live. It's about the complete control of humanity. The ultimate vision of the World Economic Forum and leaders like Klaus Schwab is a world where every aspect of life is monitored, regulated, and ultimately controlled. All in the name of protecting the planet, maintaining order, and ensuring compliance with the system. To understand why Stage 4 is happening, you have to step into their mindset. Climate change, overpopulation, and the need for resource management have become the justifications for total control. Leaders like Schwab believe that the only way to prevent a planetary collapse is by controlling the global population, regulating behaviour, and ensuring absolute compliance. To them, this isn't tyranny, it's necessary. The survival of the planet, they argue, depends on a world where human freedom is sacrificed for the greater good. They believe the system they're creating is not just inevitable, but justified. So what does Stage 4 really lead to? It's not just about the present, it's about shaping humanity for the future. In the eyes of people like Klaus Schwab and the World Economic Forum, humanity 100 years from now needs to be highly productive, intelligent, and genetically optimized. A population that can handle the challenges of climate change, dwindling resources, and an overburdened planet. To them, this vision is not dystopian, it's absolute. They believe the only way forward is through a world where human beings are enhanced, living longer and producing more, but a system where they are completely controlled, because in their minds, uncontrolled human freedom and growth are exactly what's got us into this crisis in the first place. In this vision of the future, humanity's value is based on productivity. Every individual is genetically engineered to be more intelligent, more capable, and more compliant. Through AI-driven healthcare, brain-computer interfaces, and genetic modification, people will live longer, but only if they fit the criteria the system sets. The system will track your health, your cognitive abilities, and even your mental state. It will be designed to keep you alive as long as you're useful to society. But if you fall outside of the system's parameters, if you don't meet the standards, they'll cut off access to life-extending treatments. You might live a longer life, but only if you're productive to the system. But this isn't just about intelligence and productivity. At the heart of this vision is the belief that the planet is overpopulated. That human beings consume far too many resources and contribute too much to climate change. The solution? Strict population control. Through mandatory birth control and genetic screening, only the most valuable citizens will be allowed to reproduce. The rest will be sterilised, not as punishment, but as a necessary step to ensure the planet's survival. This isn't a future where every family gets to choose how many children they have. It's a future where the system decides for you. And here's where it gets even darker. Stage 4 isn't just the endgame for control, it's the end of freedom as we know it. In the name of efficiency, human freedom will be engineered out of existence. With AI-driven surveillance, even your thoughts will no longer be private. You won't just lose the right to choose what you do with your life, you'll lose the ability to think freely. The system will flag any sign of dissent, a frown at the wrong moment, a glance of disapproval at a political broadcast. These will be enough to label you as a potential threat. Your entire life will be monitored, not just for what you do, but for how you think. And the system won't stop until every last trace of rebellion is wiped out. By the time we reach this point, there will be no resistance, not because people don't want to resist, but because the tools to fight back will be already gone. Here's the terrifying truth. This isn't just a vision. The tools to make it happen are already being built. The foundations of AI surveillance, social credit systems, and genetic monitoring are already in place. In the next 10 to 15 years, these technologies will be fully integrated in society. By the time we realize what's happening, it's already too late. People like Klaus Schwab don't think in terms of decades. They think in terms of centuries. And the world they're building is for the future, their future, where humanity is controlled, genetically perfected, and obedient to the system. But there's something missing from this story, a question that should be burning in your mind. Sure, Schwab and the World Economic Forum may genuinely believe they're saving the planet. But why in the hell are global elites so willing to go along with them? History has shown us that the elites only care about one thing, and it sure as hell isn't saving the planet. Throughout history, the elites have always found ways to expand their power under the guise of solving problems. And this time is no different. While Schwab talks about planetary survival, the elites see the potential for something far more personal. Unlimited control over a genetically optimized, highly productive population under a system where they call the shots. For the elites, this vision represents the ultimate power grab. With AI-driven surveillance systems, social credit systems, and genetic engineering in their hands, they can create a future where they are untouchable. They don't just go along with Schwab's plan for planetary survival because they care. They go along because their chance to create a world where they are at the top and everyone else is at their mercy is a dream they've always had. A world of absolute control. Think about it. Climate change, overpopulation, resource depletion are real issues, but in the hands of the elite, these crises become the perfect excuse to build a system where power is concentrated in the hands of the few. They've always known how to exploit these crises to their advantage, and now, with the Great Reset, they're doing it on a global scale. For them, this isn't about solving planetary problems. It's about turning those problems into the perfect excuse to reshape humanity in a way that benefits them greatly. In the world of Stage 4, the elites get to live their dream. A future they no longer need to worry about dissent, where freedom has become engineered out of the system, and where they control who gets access to the best resources, because they own it all. To them, the Great Reset isn't just about survival, it's about creating a system where they hold the keys to everything: life, death, freedom and control. And once this system is in place, it will be impossible for anyone to challenge them, because by then, the very idea of resistance will have been engineered out of you. A long time ago, I once saw a TV series or a film, I can't remember quite which, that had an adage in it, that had a quotation that has always stuck with me. The king only got his crown because his subjects allowed it. Power, control, they only exist because we, the people, allow them to exist. And the truth of the matter is, this Great Reset is no different. This Great Reset is the crown. And the people that are trying to take it will only get it if we allow it. But it's not all doom and gloom. It doesn't have to be this way. It doesn't have to happen. There are things you can do right now that will stop this. Or at the very least protect you and your children and their children against it. Humour me for a second. Think back to the very first Star Wars, the one titled A New Hope. What happens at the very beginning? The evil Empire marches in to seize control, while Princess Leia rushes to get critical information off the ship. Why? Because knowledge is the key to everything. She knows that information is the most powerful weapon in any fight. And that's true not just in a galaxy far, far away. It's true right here, right now. You need to know that this is not all doom and gloom. There is a way to stop this happening. In a lot of videos you'll see online about the Great Reset, what they try and do is fill you with fear, fill you with dread, fill you with a sense of helplessness. But I'm not going to do that. I'm going to tell you the steps to fight back. The very first step in resisting control is staying informed. Knowledge is the most powerful weapon we have. And if you want to protect your freedoms, you have to know what's happening. Do not rely on the mainstream narrative alone. Seek out independent journalism. Support those who hold governments and corporations accountable. And find alternative perspective that gives you the bigger picture. Remember how I invoked the name Tommy Robinson earlier and said I don't agree with everything he says, but I listen because it's getting extra perspectives on what's going on now. You also need to understand how AI, surveillance technology and social credit systems work so you can stay ahead of the curve. When you truly grasp how they're trying to control you, that's when you know how to fight back. But knowledge alone is not going to be enough. One of the greatest threats to our freedom is the creeping acceptance of constant surveillance. It's slow, it's subtle, but it's happening. And here's the thing, they can't control you if you don't let them. You have the power to demand better data protection. You can push for stronger privacy laws in your country, refusing to let corporations and governments track your every move under the guise of safety. And personally, you can choose to use privacy-focused technology, encrypt your communications, use VPNs, and choose platforms that don't sell your data. Reject surveillance technology. Say no to facial recognition in public spaces. You have the right to your own identity, one that isn't being scanned, tracked and sold. You still have the power to resist this future, but only if you act now. Another crucial step is protecting your financial independence. One of the ways they will tighten their grip on you is by controlling how you spend your money. But the good news? You can start taking steps today to secure your financial freedom. Diversify your assets. Invest in decentralized currencies like Bitcoin. or even in tangible assets like precious metals. These are harder for government-controlled financial institutions to track and regulate. Stay informed. Educate yourself about how centralized digital currencies are being rolled out. Once cash is removed from the system, digital currencies give governments the power to monitor and control every transaction you make. Take control of your finances while you still have the freedom to do so, because without financial independence, you'll no longer own your own life. The system will. And don't underestimate the power of community. You don't have to rely on large corporations or governments for everything. In fact, the stronger your local communities are, the less vulnerable you are to control of those systems. Support local initiatives that promote self-sustainability, whether it's joining a local food co-op or participating in a community garden. The less reliant you are on the big systems, the more independent you become. Strengthen local networks that focus on privacy rights, free speech, and digital sovereignty. When people come together, they become a force that's hard to control. Because if you rely too much on large systems, you hand over your power. Get involved in local politics. Make sure your local leaders prioritize your rights, protecting privacy and freedom on a local level. The more connected we are in our communities, the stronger our resistance becomes. It's also crucial for you to understand that your digital rights are human rights, and the future of privacy and free speech is being written right now. You have the chance to shape it. Support organisations that fight for online freedom and digital rights. Groups like the Electronic Frontier Foundation or Privacy International are leading the charge in this battle. Advocate for laws that protect rights to digital privacy and push back against the normalisation of censorship and surveillance. The future of the internet doesn't have to be controlled by corporations and governments. It can be ours. But only if you act now. With the 2024 presidential election just a month away in the United States, the leaders you elect will shape the policies that either protect your freedoms or erode them. Just look at figures like Kamala Harris, who has constantly pushed for tighter regulations of online speech and digital platforms, supposedly to fight misinformation. But this raises the question, who gets to decide what is considered misinformation? Leaders like Harris are advocating for increased control over what you can say and do online, all in the name of protecting you from misinformation. That's why it's more important than ever for you to vote for privacy defenders, those who are truly committed to protecting your digital rights and fighting corporate overreach. You need to research candidates who stand for freedom and privacy, not more control. You must speak out. Use your platforms, whether it's social media, local forums, or public spaces. Spread awareness. Raise your voice against the slow erosion of freedoms. Because if you stay silent, the system wins. But if you speak out now, you can turn the tide. And the final step, the most important step of all, the one thing you can do right now that gives our future the best shot, is educate your children. Whether it be your children, your nieces, your nephew, their friends, educate your children. The future doesn't just belong to us, it belongs to them. And if we don't prepare them for what's coming, they'll be easy targets for those in power who want to turn them into nothing more than soulless servants to the system, drained for their value before being discarded. But it doesn't have to be this way. Your children deserve the right to choose their identity, to choose their destiny. And if you act now, you can ensure they do. You need to teach them to question everything. Teach them to recognize control, how to use critical thinking, to understand the power of privacy, and to value freedom over convenience. Give them the knowledge they need to stand up and say no, and to build a future where they control their destiny, not the elites. You have the power in your hands right now to give your children every single tool they need to not just be a part of a system, but to reshape the very world they will inherit. If you weaponize the next generation with knowledge, when the time comes, they won't just inherit the world, they'll own it. There you go. I've told you everything you need to know. I've told you stage 1 through 4, and I've told you how to deal with it. Now, I'm sure there's going to be those of you going, yeah, it's all science fiction, voodoo nonsense. But I'm telling you, it's not. I'm telling you that some of the things I've discussed in this video are happening as we speak. It's up to you to decide whether you're going to stick your head in your sand or you're going to go along and deal with it. The power has always been in your hands. You just have to ask yourself, what's it worth to you? What's freedom worth to you, to your children, and to their children? Because if we act now, we can guarantee their future will be bright. Their future will be what they shape it to be. If we don't, well, look on the bright side. At least their future's sorted. Thank you for watching. Thank you for being here. If you've enjoyed this video, please hit the like button. It really does help. If you want to see more, hit the subscribe button. And if you want to join me on social media, there's a link in my thingy up there somewhere to my X account, which I use as a personal account, and I'll talk to anyone and anything about anything. And if you want to send me some messages calling me whatever, then please do. I find them funny. So until next time, thank you for watching. Thank you for being here. I know I've said it twice, so I'm saying it again. Keep critical.